Good evening and welcome to this District Planning Committee meeting on Wednesday the 9th of June 2021. My name is Councillor Mark Hurd and I'm Chairman of this committee. Before we commence the business of the meeting, it was rather remiss of me and I apologise for this. I didn't introduce our two new members, Councillor Emma Stevens from Tollsbury and Councillor Bruce Hubner, who is representing Heybridge, and I welcome you both to Maldon District Council and I congratulate you on your election victory. I would also like to congratulate Councillors Wendy Stamp, Councillor Jane Fleming and Councillor Mark Durham on their success at the recent County Council elections. So my congratulations to them. So members, housekeeping. The setup of the meeting has been designed to mitigate for COVID and therefore can I ask all present to work to the protocols agreed at the Council meeting on the 29th of April 2021 and in the interest of member and officer safety. This meeting is streamed live and recorded, and by being present in the meeting you are giving your consent to being recorded. Members and officers, during each item, please indicate clearly if you wish to speak and I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Members, the process this evening will obviously be different and therefore I encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When invited to speak, please remain seated. You may remove your mask, of course, as you're sitting down. If you wish, put on your visor and speak clearly. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please ensure that you reference a page and paragraph number. Thank you for your cooperation. We move on now to agenda item 2, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Dewick, Councillor Helm, Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Skeens and Councillor Miss White. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any other apologies, Miss Bird? No, Chairman. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 3, which is minutes of the last meeting, and it's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of October 2020, found on pages 7 to 17, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mays. If any member wishes to raise any matter of urgency, of accuracy, they need to indicate, please, their wish to speak. Thank you. Members, can we agree those by assent? Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. This is to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraphs 6 to 8, inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. And members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Do I have any declarations? Councillor Stamp.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to declare that I am a member of Essex County Council and they are statutory consultees on some of the applications tonight, or all of them, whether they've responded or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, that's noted. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chairman. Also, non-pecuniary who are consulting in planning matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leggan.
Thank you, Chair. Non-pecuniary is just in agenda item 6 and agenda item 7, so they correspondence from both sets of classes.
Thank you. And Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not pecuniary, I'm a member of Essex County.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest, agenda item 6, in that I'm a trustee and chairman of a almshouse trust, and that originally on what I think is phase, referred to as phase 1, I voted against that application, but since, after the council shown its wishes, have supported the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Councillor Hull.
I have
You'll be leaving. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. Like Councillor Wise, I would declare, same agenda item, that I am a member of an alms house charity, non-pecuniary.
Non-pecuniary, thank you. And Councillor Bell.
Just to advise, Mr Chairman, I should be leaving the chamber for item 7.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you for that, members. I'll move on then to the first item, which is agenda item 5. This is 21/00198/VAR, land north of Marsh Road, Burnham-on-Crouch, and this is found on pages 17 to 26. Members, please note that a member's update in relation to this application has been circulated prior to the meeting, and this can be found on page 3 and 4 and relates to comments of objection. I understand that Ms Matthews is presenting this report. I'm not sure where you are, Ms Matthews. Where are we? Oh, you're there. Right. Okay. Thank you. So could I ask you then, please, to present the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay? I think I'm on loudspeaker, so I should be. So this is an application relating to land north of Marsh Road, Burnham-on-Crouch, and the application seeks the removal of one of the conditions, condition 36.
Okay, could I stop? I'm sorry, Catherine, could I just stop you there? Can everybody hear this? No? Okay.
Mike? Okay, is that better?
Is that any better, members?
Very echoey.
I think the acoustics aren't great here. As you're seated, Miss Matthews, you may remove your visor if you wish. Yeah, okay. And
Is that
you're
any
generally
better?
a very quiet person, but if you wish to speak up, that would be great.
Is that better? Well, if it's echoey, I can't. That's better.
That's great. Thank you, members.
It was
Thank
the
you,
mask.
Miss Matthews.
Okay. So this is land north of Marsh Road in Burnham-on-Crouch, and the application seeks the removal of condition 36, which was one of the conditions attached to the original plan permission for a residential development of 90 dwellings and associated works on the application site shown on the screen. And condition 36 related to a requirement that the affordable housing was built to NDSS, which stands for nationally determined space standards. So the site is one of the allocated sites in Burnham-on-Crouch. It's allocated for a minimum of 90 dwellings. Plan permission was granted for 90 dwellings on the site in December 2020, subject to conditions and following the completion of a Section 106 agreement. 40% of the houses are to be affordable homes. The Section 106 agreement requires that the affordable housing is provided with the minimum room sizes as defined in the current National Described Space Standards. And furthermore, the details submitted as part of the current application, discharge of condition in the application relating to condition 36 also comply with the NDSS. The requested removal of condition 36 would be in conflict with the requirements of the completed 106, and the applicant did not object to the imposition of the condition. If the affordable housing units are not constructed to meet the national standards as currently required, it could not be ensured that all of the affordable units would meet the greatest current housing needs of the district. The recommendation may appear to be in conflict with the conclusions of an inspector who determined an appeal in December 2020 relating to land between Shanders and Creeksea Lane in Burnham. But the points which are made out in the report is that government advice is that housing may make use of these standards where the need for an internal space standard can be justified. The standards is explicitly referred to as part of the approved Affordable Housing and Viability SPD adopted by the Council. And as part of the appeal, the inspector acknowledges that SPDs are capable of being a material consideration. And unlike as part of that appeal, it has now been demonstrated how this could make the dwellings unsuitable and therefore not be able to meet the identified need. The applicant agreed with the condition being imposed and willingly entered into a Section 106 containing the same requirement. So in the absence of a requirement to comply with these standards, the local authority could not ensure that the affordable housing proposed met the greatest housing needs of the district. I don't know whether they're not particularly relevant to the application, but I did take some photos of the site the other day to show work has commenced on site. But in conclusion, officers consider the condition is necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all the other respects. And on this basis, it is recommended that the application is refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Matthews. Now, we have one public participant for this planning application, and in line with the public participation scheme, I will now invite the applicant, Mr Cassion, on behalf of Taylor Wimpey, I hope I've said your name correct, thank you, to read out his submission. And I have to remind you that you are allocated 2 minutes only for public speaking in accordance with the scheme. So, Mr Cassion, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Caslin, and I'm the Planning Manager at Taylor Wimpey, London. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you this evening and speak in support of this application. In August 2020, this committee resolved to grant permission for 90 homes on the site, including 40% affordable homes. It was well after the committee, and at the 11th hour of the legal agreement being signed, the officers at the council added on condition 36, i.e. after the new homes were already considered acceptable by this council. At the time this was happening, Taylor Wimpey could not accommodate more delay to progressing the site, so reluctantly we agreed to add this condition. It is worth noting that this was before the appeal decision at Creeksea, and had we seen that appeal, we would have likely taken a very different position. The development plan against which all planning applications in this borough should be determined does not require any compliance with the NDSS. The planning inspector for the recent David Wilson's home appeal and the land between Chandler's and Creeksea Lane site considered this very matter and concluded that current planning policy cannot require such compliance. Whilst officers at the council have put forward further information following our application, we believe that this still comes under the banner of what the inspector considered in coming to his decision. With regard to the legal agreement attached to the permission, this already includes an NDSS-related requirement unless agreed otherwise, which he did at the original planning committee. National planning practice guidance is clear that there should not be any duplication between planning contributions and planning conditions and obligations within legal agreements, which is what we have in this instance. Given all of this, we strongly believe that the addition of condition 36 is unjustified, and hence why we have applied to remove it. I will close this by adding the assurance that these homes are not small and would not be poor quality. Just like the market homes that are popular with our customers, they comply with the NDSS in terms of internal floor space. So they're not small, they're just not in full compliance with formal storage and bedroom sizes. These are high quality buildings and will be fantastic homes for future residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Before I open this debate, any other officers wish to speak on this? No, thank you very much. Members, I'll now open the debate and invite you to put any questions or make any comments that you have on your report. Councillor Boyce.
Move the recommendation, Chairman.
Second that. Well, the recommendation is to refuse. That has been proposed and seconded. Members, are you happy to agree that by assent?
No.
Right. Anybody else? Councillor Swain.
Vote, please, Chair.
I'll just hear what Councillor Swain has to say first. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to ask one or two questions, Chairman. Clarify something. The first question is, would derogation from these national standards compromise the numbers and types of accommodation shown in the table on 3.1.7, I think it is? Secondly, there seems to be some dispute about the relationship of an SPD to the LDP about whether it's introducing a new planning policy. But having said that, we have got it written in the Section 106 agreement, and I suppose we can rely upon that, even though there may be some argument over the relevance of the Creeksea decision. Lastly, I would like to say that from a reputational point of view, I don't think it does the applicant much good to be seen to be trying to go below national minimum standards. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Sorry, was there a question in there, first of all, or was that a comment?
Sorry?
Was that a comment or a question, Councillor Swan? I didn't quite catch it.
Well, the first two were questions.
Okay.
About the effect on the numbers and types of accommodation that are we looking for if we reduce these, or allow a reduction in the standards. And I suppose it was a comment that we can, rhetorical question, rely upon the Section 106 agreement anyway.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Leo, do you need to come back on that? Or Miss Matthews? The effect on the number of dwellings, the type of dwellings.
Yeah, through Chairman, my housing colleague may want to chip in, but I'll explain my understanding of it. But in terms of the table at 3.1.7, that wouldn't change, and the proposal isn't to reduce the number of affordable units or the percentage of affordable units, or even change the housing mix that proposed. My understanding of the issue is in particular with two bed, 4-person units. Council has had experience of developers who have built two-bedroom, 4-person units, but the bedrooms aren't quite big enough for the four people, so they've had to be let as two-bedroom, 3-person units, and not two-bedroom, 4-person units, and that's because they didn't meet the NDSS standard for 2-bedroom, 4-person units. So there's no change as such to the affordable housing proposed. It's just that particular issue has cropped up in the past, and this is why we've started to try and firm these things up before the permission is granted, to make sure that the problems that we've experienced in the past don't reoccur. And we do have the Section 106, but I would suggest that if the council agrees to the condition being removed, that is it would be quite difficult, I would have thought, to enforce the Section 106 requirements, because the council has been seen to be agreeing that the NDSS standards aren't necessary, and there would be a process to go through to get that changed on the 106, but at the moment they are compatible. If the condition is removed, then they would become incompatible, and there would be an issue there that would need to be sorted out legally. I think there was a question about the relationship between the SPD and the LDP. So the LDP is the overarching development plan with the overarching policies, and the SPDs, we've got a number of SPDs that have sought to expand on the policy and support the policies that are in the local plan. So we've got, for example, the design guide as an SPD, which supports the policy at D1, which talks about design, so it goes into a lot more detail. So whilst the SPD isn't a policy in its own right, it is linked to the local plan because it's come out of the policies in the local plan and been developed in the framework of the local plan that we've approved. I think that answers your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms Matthews. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, Chairman, I want to wrestle with this. I think Ms Matthews might have already answered one of my questions, but could I ask if there's any other difference it makes, please, to the use so that we know exactly what the potential differences are, because I find the reduction of occupancy part 1, even if it's potential, I find that quite worrying. So thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, I don't know whether Damien is able to expand a little bit with a bit more authority than me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to do my best to explain this. So obviously there is a risk that if the accommodation sizes are reduced, that we're less able to help those people that have a 2-bedroom, 4-person need. There are more households where you have 2 children in the household compared to 1, and so therefore these properties could be considered overcrowded very quickly if the size is allowed to reduce beyond the
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one because my device has been out of post. Normally, really clear answer to that is that the applicant had agreed to condition 36 as part of it.
Through Chairman, yes, they did agree to it. It was added on, but it was done with their knowledge and agreement. It was my understanding. I wasn't involved with the application at that time, but that is what I understand to be the case. But the developer had already signed up or agreed to Section 106 agreement, which had a very similar requirement. So there wasn't any reason really for them to disagree. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Stamp.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to praise the officers for the recommendation. We shouldn't be giving in. The minimum standards are there for a reason, and they protect our affordable housing needs and the residents who need them. I think the planning appeal in question failed on a different matter, and I would certainly back Councillor Boyce and agree with the recommendation to refuse this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other members wish to speak?
Call for vote, please, Chair.
Yes, I'll just hear what Councillor Hull has to say. All right, that's noted, thank you. So we have had a request for a recorded vote. Is that seconded? Councillor Lagan, thank you very much. Tara, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes, members, if you could indicate for or against abstaining, please, when I call your name. Starting with Councillor Bunton, but this is for the officer's recommendation.
So this is for the officer's recommendation to refuse, members.
Thank you. 4.
Thank you, Councillor Misfield.
4, thank you.
Councillor Brian Hill.
4.
Councillor Bell. 4. Councillor Boyce.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Channer. 4. Councillor Durham.
4.
Councillor Edwards.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming. 4. Councillor Hurd.
I will abstain.
Councillor Hoover.
4.
Councillor Hull. 4. Councillor Keys.
4.
Councillor Lagan.
4, please, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Mays.
4.
Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor Morris.
4.
Councillor Nunn.
4.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
4.
Councillor Siddle.
4.
Councillor Stamp.
4.
Councillor Stevens. 4. Councillor Mrs. Stilts.
4.
Councillor Swain.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
4.
Thank you, Chairman. The results of that are 24 for, no against, 1 abstention. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Did you get a chance to vote, Councillor Swain? I missed it. Did you get a chance to vote? You did. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I declare that application then is refused in line with the officer's recommendation. We move on then to agenda item number 6. This is 210075 OUTM, land 250 metres north of 16A Maldon Road, Burnham. Thank you, Councillor Hull.
Thank you.
Good night. So, members, we move to this agenda item. It's found on pages 27 to 76. Please note that a member's update in relation to this application has been circulated prior to the meeting, and this is found on pages 5 to 10 and contains changes of conditions and consultations. Again, I think, Ms Matthews, if you're able to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so in addition to the updates on the written members update that has been previously circulated, there's a couple of further updates, and one is in relation to condition 6, which talks about the dwelling mix. That has slightly changed since the report was first drafted. in terms of the bungalows. So we've now got 42 one-bed bungalows, 62 bed bungalows and 33 bed bungalows. And two further updates, a petition has been received with 205 signatures. It's been submitted by the agent for the application in support of the application on the basis that the facility is much needed to serve the local and broader community. We've also received an NHS response today, and they have requested a sum of £87,400 as a financial contribution to mitigate the impact of the development on local GP provision, which the applicant has agreed to. So this is an application with all matters of detail reserved except for layout and means of access to the site. The application is for 132 1, 2, 3 bedroom bungalows, 100 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments in 2-storey buildings, and the erection of a single-storey ancillary multi-use community building. The bungalows would be in groups of between 8 and 20, and all the residential units would be for the over 55s. This is to be phase 2 of a development. Phase 1, which has been called Burnham Waters by the developer, and was previously approved, and is adjacent to the south and western boundaries of the application site. Phase 1 included healthcare and leisure facilities. This application is shown on your screen there. It's an L-shaped area of land which extends to about 20 hectares. It's located within the countryside, around 50 metres from Burnham-on-Crouch's settlement boundary at its closest point. To the south and east of the site are a collection of existing properties fronting Maldon Road, Green Lane and Mangaps Chase. To the north and east are arable fields, and there are public right-of-ways crossing and within the vicinity of the site. This is an aerial photo showing the site edged in red. You've got the blue box there, which is phase 1. You've got the pink dots there, which is the Maldon Road, and you've also got the blue line there, which is the Panels Brook watercourse. So this is the layout that has been submitted. There'll be 74 one-bedroom units, 106 two-bed units, and 52 three-bed units in total. 30% of the housing provision would be met with a combination of on-site units, including a group of bungalows to the southeastern corner of the site, which are these brown rectangles here in the corner. And also a financial contribution for the balance of the affordable housing requirement. There'll be a margin of native tree and shrub planting proposed along the outer edge of the site, which will contain a 3-metre wide perimeter footpath, which would link with that path approved as part of phase 1. The permissive bridleway agreed as part of phase 1 will also be extended to the east through this phase 2. So on this layout here, you've got the orange blocks down to the south, which will be standard flats. And then to the north of there, you have a group of waterfront flats. And then the others would be single-storey bungalows, so as I said, in groups of 8 to 20 around, they've called them their own little communities. A management company will be established for the grounds maintenance, foul and surface water drainage and other utility services, and that will be required through a related Section 106 agreement. As part of the previous approval, public transport contribution of £75,000 was secured, and there will be a bus service to service the site and a minibus service to be provided by the developer, along with electric cycles and electric buggies will also be available for residents. Particularly taking into account the planning history of the adjoining site, it's considered that the site has a reasonable level of accessibility, and the occupiers of the site would not be overly reliant on the use of private vehicles, which weighs in favour of the proposal. The details of the affordable scheme, including tenure costs, allocation of units, will be agreed in consultation with the housing manager as part of compliance with the Section 106 agreement, which is suggested. So I've got some photos here. This is along Maldon Road, looking east and west. Street scene on Maldon Road, and that's to the east of the site. Again, this is what it basically lies at the moment. So these are where the phase 1 development would go. And then the photos of the expanded site. So I haven't got copies of all these photos, all these viewpoints, but there's a selection. So we've got, they'll be in order. So we've got 1 there, and 4, and 6, and 7, and 11. So that's viewpoint 1, and 4, and 6. So 6 is from the public footpath, which runs along part of the site and cuts across through it. And viewpoint 7 and 11, so it's just see the arable fields there. So in conclusion, the development has been assessed as being acceptable in principle overall, taking into account the substantial benefits of the proposal, which would outweigh the harm the development will cause to the character and appearance of the area and the limits on accessibility. In particular, the provision of specialist housing for the elderly, which Maldon District residents would be given priority to, would weigh heavily in favour of the development, particularly currently when there is only 3.26 years of housing land supply. As soon as the reserved matters are approved, or if they are approved, development would start contributing to the Council's 5-year housing land supply. And bearing in mind that phase 1 gained approval for reserved matters well within 2 years of the outline permission having been granted, and that shouldn't be too far away. And there will also be economic benefits noted in the report. The development is not anticipated to cause harm to the amenity of the occupiers of neighbouring existing residents, highway safety or nature conservation, and is also been found to be satisfactory in terms of flood risk and drainage. Issues in relation to contamination and ecology could be addressed by conditions, and adequate levels of parking could be made. The applicant has agreed to enter onto 106 to address matters arising in relation to off-site medical provision, road junction capacity issues, off-site nature conservation impacts and affordable housing, including financial contribution in the region of £4.2 million. The proposed heads of agreement include a requirement that no development on phase 2 shall commence until the 90th dwelling of phase 1 has been completed and is ready for occupation, and until the healthcare, community centre, shops and minibus service approved with part phase 1 has been constructed and are operational. On this basis, it is recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to 106 and conditions as set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms Matthews. So we have one public participant for this planning application, and in line with the public participation scheme, I will now invite the agent, Mr Rowe, to read out his submission. May I remind you, Mr Rowe, that you are allocated 2 minutes only for public speaking in accordance with the scheme. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members. I'm Stuart Rowe, a Chartered Town Planner and the agent for the applicant. The first phase of the retirement community was approved in 2019 because the council recognised that it could not provide for the significant needs of its elderly population on allocated sites, which are controlled by large house builders who don't build retirement homes. Precisely the same planning policy circumstances that applied in 2019 remain in effect now, and those same policies support the grant of permission for this second phase, which will further assist in meeting the continuing acute need for retirement homes in the district. There is a new matter which members will be familiar with and possibly dread, the lack of a 5-year housing supply. However, this application doesn't rely upon that for primary support. Like phase 1, the second phase is acceptable on its merits when tested against the development plan, and it would be inconsistent, I think, to find otherwise. The lack of a 5-year supply adds weight to the argument, but it's not the reason that you should grant permission. The reason is because the district has a significant need for elderly persons accommodation that otherwise won't be met. The lack of a housing supply will encourage a raft of applications for ordinary housing, which will not meet these needs, yet will be hard for you to resist. The shortfall in housing of around 500 homes will come. They will be approved, if not by the council, then by inspectors at appeal. They will not be necessarily where you want them to be or of a type that best fits the needs in the district, but they will come. If approved, this development will deliver about 40% of that need and make it less acute in one go. This would assist you in defending appeals against other unacceptable proposals. This will provide high-quality retirement homes and a £4.2 million contribution so that the council can provide affordable housing elsewhere in the district. I hope that you can see from the report that the benefits of the scheme far outweigh any adverse consequences and can grant planning permission this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Rowe. Now members, I know that members of the public listening to this are having trouble hearing what your comments are. I think that Berna has got a roving microphone, so to try and improve the sound quality, she will be coming along to try and see if we can help things along. So we'll give that a go. So members, I'm now going to open the debate and invite you to put any questions or comments that you have to the report. Councillor Stan.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I actually do speak, 'cause I'm going to give way to the rest of the members, there's something I think needs to be said from me. I would like to say, Chairman, that before we do actually start the debate, it is important in my view that members are aware that I was made aware that somebody or bodies have been knocking on doors around the parts of Burnham-on-Crouch and allegedly saying that they are representing the council. I wish to make it quite clear to all members and members of the public that Maldon District Council and their representatives have not been knocking on any doors saying that they're collecting information or data. I think that is really important, Chairman, that we make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So, Councillor Durham and then Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. The officer mentioned the impact on the 5-year land supply. I wonder if she could put a figure to that to tell us approximately how far this would go to solving the 5-year land supply issue, should this be granted, please.
Ms Matthews.
I think Mr. Lee knows the figures off the top of his head more than I do.
With all of these things, there's a very, very large amount of assumption and estimation within it. Currently, at 3.26 years, we're around 539 houses is short. Taking into account the way that members know that the development brought forward, that's nearly 600 houses, and obviously we need the number of houses for this year. As Ms Matthews explained during the presentation, this applicant has moved forward with the reserve matters quite quickly, and we would be able to make an assumption for the calculation that that would likely to happen again with phase 2, and that would be evidenced if they are able to meet their their apparent deadlines for commencing development this summer, because one of the ways that you work out the 5-year land supply is actually to show that they're deliverable, so you have to provide evidence, and generally there's a formula that you use to work that out, but if you can evidence that there will be some developments will be quicker, some developments will be slower, the amount of number that goes into the development and the 5-year land supply falls away. With this in mind, you know, to be honest, I haven't actually thought about this in any detail before, so it would be very, very off the cuff. Rather than excluding the first 2 years, which you'd normally do with the reserve matters before the application, I'd say that you'd probably have to knock 2 years off. So I would say that very roughly on the sort of general estimation, I'd say this would add 120 dwellings to our 5-year land supply instantly, which is not a demonstrable figure. It's a notable figure on a shortfall of this level, but that is very much a wing and a prayer at the moment, just literally a finger in the air, because I hadn't prepped for that, but just taking into account my knowledge of working out the 5-year land supply, I'd estimate that, where if, for example, it was an application that a land trader, for example, had put the application rather than the person that was bringing forward themselves, that would elongate the process and would reduce the number of dwellings that would instantly go into the 5-year land supply. And then if you're somewhere in the middle with a normal corporate builder that hasn't evidenced a speedy delivery in Maldon, you would be somewhere in the middle. So that gives you just a rough guide on the calculation, but as I said, it's very much a ring and a prayer, so take that into account with the appropriate weight, but please don't quote me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll just take the microphone over to Councillor Morris, if we may. Oh, well, I'm thinking of members of the public, Councillor Morris. So if you do you want to go around the back, thank you very much. So do please bear with us, members, and we'll try and make it as clear as we can for all.
It's a karaoke thing.
Okay.
Thanks, Bernard. Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose that we do not take the officer's recommendation and that we refuse this. I'd ask for a seconder, please.
I will second.
Bulk and scale.
Okay, well, we'll continue with the debate for the moment. Councillor Lagan, I think, did you have your hand up? Yes.
That's all right. Yeah, it brings me back my rock and roll days. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Morris. I received a letter today from the developer, which was quite intimidating in its tone, basically saying, you know, look, we have to do this because otherwise it's going to be forced upon us. I don't think this council should be scared of making a decision that's best for the residents, and I agree with Councillor Morris that the size of this second extension, or this extension to the initial proposal, would be demonstrable in its size, and at the moment is not currently needed, so I'm not prepared to support this.
Thank you. I'll move now to Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. I apologise, but I've got bad hay fever. Chairman, just a couple of questions, if I may. Bearing in mind what we're hearing from Mr. Lee and officers, and I'm well aware of the fact about our housing land supply in the 5 years and the figure, etc., might be required, we are actually at the moment conducting a review of our local plan as recovered by the government, and we're doing that and starting it early due to the fact we are aware of our 5-year housing land supply. Therefore, could it be considered this application might be considered premature, bearing in mind we have done a call for sites? And we're going through a process with our planning policy working group. Ultimately, we'll go to strategy and resources and then on to council. So therefore, there may be other sites which may actually be more suitable to actually develop to help us with our housing numbers. So that's one first question, because I do recall something along those lines, I think, being said throughout the process of the previous LDP considerations. Also, I noticed the list of statutory consultees. I was rather interested to see there had been nothing that has come forward from Essex Housing. I recall at the last application on Phase 1, Essex Housing actually did not support Phase 1, although I had to say I didn't recall it being called Phase 1 at that time. And this Phase 2 is a whole new sort of gamut to me. I wasn't familiar that any other application would be coming in, although I have to say I did sort of privately consider I could perhaps see something like this coming forward at a further stage. But I noticed there's no response from Essex Housing. Did we go to Essex Housing? And they were quite clear they could not support the previous application. So I just asked those questions to start with, Chairman. And would I ask, if it's not too presumptuous, if I need to, in light of the debate, may I come back with further questions as they arise? Because often the debate can get you thinking on avenues perhaps you hadn't considered before you entered the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I have got a couple of other hands up, but I'll go to... are you able to answer that question, Matt, please?
Do you, Chairman? If I can ask Catherine Matthews to pick up the consultee one, and obviously she's the case officer, I'm happy to pick up the other ones, and as quite possibly I'll miss something, if Matthews can pick that up afterwards, I'll be more than happy that. In relation to, or before I get on to Councillor Channer's points, can I just make one comment into a statement made by Councillor Lagan about currently not needed? All I'd like to evidence is that we are unable to demonstrate a 5-year land supply, so the council is unable to say that there isn't need for housing per se, and the strategic housing market assessment that we had before the LDP said we needed over 600 housing, I can't remember the exact figure, through the local plan period to meet the need for older people housing specifically. And at the moment we have Phase 1 and I think it's around 30 dwellings through the strategic site. So I would be very concerned about a statement saying it's not currently needed, because the evidence would say that there is a current need. Whether or not you agree with this is the right site is a different question, but there is evidence that there is a current need. So I think members just need to be very aware of that. Now that we're dealing with the lack of 5-year land supply and a tilted balance where the development starts in favour of the, presumption is in favour of the development, the fact that you have to be able to show demonstrable harm, that where harm outcomes the benefit. So I just think members need to be very aware of maybe using the correct terminology and things. I just want to give some guidance to say that saying there's currently not needed would be false because there is evidence to say that, but just for clarity. In relation to the threatening email, I'm not going to comment on that point. You know, the applicant has a right to communicate with members, and it's within their gift to do that as they wish. But, you know, that's not form part of the officer's recommendation, does not form part of the report, and to a certain extent, as I always advise all members around correspondence received outside of the plan application process, is to give it the appropriate weight because it's not been evidenced or commented on by officers. So, as always, I'd advise members to give that limited weight, irrespective of what it contained. In relation to the new local plan and could this be classed as premature, the answer is no. The new local plan will take a period to be delivered, and in that time we are required to deliver housing. We will be required to meet the housing needs of the district. An argument that this is premature would not be the right argument. Whether or not you think it's an appropriate site for housing, whether the benefits outweigh the harm significantly, etc., is a separate conversation, but any argument around prematurity would be premature because we aren't at that point where we can actually strongly say that the LDP is here and what's coming forward. We haven't even got a strategy on housing growth or anything like that, so we are nowhere near far enough down the road on reviewing the LDP to be saying that we're in a strong position to be able to demonstrate housing. And notwithstanding that, we still need to provide the housing for the current period. The new LDP will provide housing for the future period, so there is still that window of time at the moment where we would need to be delivering housing. Just to comment on Councillor Chandler's point about another application, yet it was not formally part of the application, that this was a phase one. You know, the applicant has deemed it phase one, has submitted a second application. The fact that that was never advised, that was part of the first application, shouldn't be a material consideration of this application. It should be determined on whether or not it's acceptable or not. And if I pass over to Ms Matthews for the consultee point and anything else I missed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Channer, are you happy with that answer? Right, okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move next to Councillor Siddle. Next.
Yeah, I do recognise that there is a need for this type of housing in the district, and we do need to build this type of housing. However, I really don't think this is the right location and the right design for this type of housing. I'd be interested to hear what the consultee said on this particular thing, why we didn't hear from the Essex County Council, because we did last time, and last time it was a smaller site, and Essex County Council said it was not a suitable location for a retirement village. So why are we building more at this particular location? I have a question for Ms Matthews about the public rights of way. How would someone access it? What would it be like to walk through? And because people don't have private gardens on this development, would you end up walking through someone's property? Because you might get a bit confused and lost by the density of what's going on. In terms of the density, if this was being put, say, in one of our other locations that is a development site, would it be acceptable? Would we be allowing this type of density in other locations? So it's not the best fit for our need. So I do see the need, but it's not the best fit for our need. The interesting thing about the agent in his presentation is he admitted that there are adverse consequences. So the agent sees and has said in his 2 minutes that there was adverse consequences to this particular development. And I don't see those being outweighed by what we're being presented with. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr Leake, do we know about the list of consultees? No response from Essex Housing? Ms Matthews?
Through you, Chairman, Essex County Council Social Services was consulted on the applications. I think that's the objection or the concerns that have been referred to in terms of phase one. They were consulted, but we didn't get a response from them. So that's all the information I have on that.
Okay, and the public rights of way?
Chairman, so on that point.
Sorry, I can offer a slight expansion in relation to the Essex County Council query. So Essex County Council did not support the first phase and it was considered outside the boundary, but phase two, they're not being involved because they're not proposing the extra care properties. Essex County Council are only involved in extra care affordable property, so that's where their interest sits. We would nominate from our own register the people in the district in relation to phase 2.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to move to Councillor Swain now, who's indicated. Any other members wish to speak on this? Yeah, okay, yes, I've got your name. Councillor Bassinger, thank you. Councillor Swain first, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's noticeable how easily we slipped into this discussion of phase 1 and phase 2. And my first reaction was this all part of a big scheme anyway? Because if it had this been put forward originally in its totality, I can't believe it would have been passed at all. Despite some minor references to preferences for people in the district, and the rather strange comment that 2 kilometres isn't really very far to walk, particularly bearing in mind the sort of people who this accommodation is designed for. But I think it goes to the heart of the problem that this was always a hybrid development. The idea of a retirement village and provision of supported housing, shall we say, on the same site, it just doesn't follow. The retirement village is usually a distinct, separate, self-contained community apart from an existing settlement, whereas the assisted housing and so on very much has to be integrated in a settlement. And I think compounding this by adding on this so-called phase 2 simply really just produces a suburb of Burnham and doesn't meet either of the objectives of either a retirement village or adequate facilities for supported housing. I note the reference there to the NHS had said previously at the first round that they were not in favour of more elderly accommodation in Burnham because of the inaccessibility of hospital services. I'm rather bothered about the finance in all of this. There were so many commitments long-term, commitments to providing all sorts of social and community facilities, and supposedly all going to be self-financing. I really would like to have an independent examination of this financial viability, particularly as the applicant has said that this would be in perpetuity. To come back to the basics of the decision, I think it fails on the first one about the principle of this development, because of the internal contradiction of the retirement village and the assisted housing.
Okay, could you just sum up now, please?
Yes, I would not support this, but I would ask whether a possibility that perhaps it could be deferred pending an independent assessment of the viability of the whole scheme, of phase 1 and phase 2, because it seems to me quite likely that phase 2 may be necessary for the viability of the social and commercial facilities of phase 1.
Okay, Councillor Bassinger, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering through you if I could ask Mr. Lee. He says that it's heavily, the weight of this heavily relies on the fact that we need houses for the elderly. And I just wondered how we collated that evidence. What is the evidence for that? Is there a sort of, do we have a plethora of elderly people in Burnham without houses, or are we just looking at generally across the country? So on what basis is this evidence gained, Mr. Lee?
Ms Matthews, are you able to
Please,
answer that?
Chairman, I can answer that one,
Mr.
and
Lee, yes.
Mr. Gaylor might want to assist on that. But the council has the Strategic Housing Market Assessment, which is a document that evidence bases the requirements for the housing for the district. Maldon is one of the most ageing districts in the country, and as I explained, the SHMA required over 600 houses through the local plan period for older people. It was an adopted document. The evidence was challenged and critiqued through the local plan process and found to be accurate and to be correct. So, I can't really say much more than that, really. Sorry, it sounds. Yeah.
We are not looking, we don't have a necessity in Burnham or its surrounding area to supply 600 elderly people that are homeless or desperate help. We're just talking about a figure.
Sorry. Through your chair, that is for housing, not affordable housing, not evidence for homelessness. This is just what the district needs. And this application is a market scheme. It's offering affordable housing, whether it's on-site, off-site, through financial contribution, of policy compliance. So it is a market-driven scheme, just like any other application. It is aiming at providing or meeting that need that is required. And our SPD in relation to affordable housing requires that affordable housing, any housing aimed at older people is located in Heybridge, Maldon or Burnham rather than being located across the district because of access to facilities for day-to-day living, etc. So basically, our policy says we need a certain number of properties that has been evidence-based, and our policy says they should be in Heybridge, Maldon or Burnham, and that's why the officer's report explains that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Thompson, then Morris, then Boyle, and then Councillor Bell. So I'll go, and Councillor Mays. Okay, so Councillor...
Mr Chairman,
yes.
Actually, I did put in the chat the order of the speakers, and Councillor Boyce should be next, please.
I see, okay.
Chairman, can you actually see me? Because I can't see you, because that isn't...
I'm looking at you through two screens. I can see you now.
Well, I've been waving my hand from the start of the debate, and you have consistently ignored me. So I assumed you couldn't see me. Chairman, I believe, as I said in my declaration of interest, that the first time that Phase 1 came before the Council, I voted against it, as I think Mrs Channer did. And I think we're probably the only two here that actually voted against the scheme in the first place. But as I went on to say, that once it became the Council decision, I then approached it in an entirely different manner. As somebody has said, that we didn't know that Phase 2 was coming when Phase 1 was agreed. And I believe also, like that, it may have been Councillor Swain, I believe that would have made a difference to the original debate. What are we looking for if we go ahead with this? A Phase 3, a Phase 4, a Phase 5? I know you can only determine what you have in front of you and not what may be into the future. However, I would support Councillor Morris's proposal if there is sufficient grounds, planning grounds, to oppose it. And I would reserve the right, Chairman, if his motion goes down, to come back on the new substantive motion with some other issues. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd just like to ask, maybe I've had a shot with life, but are three-bedroom retirement bungalows a thing? Because I've never heard of a three-bedroom retirement bungalow. I'll just, is there an officer here that could, answer that one? And also, for my proposal, I would request a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back on that, Mr Lee?
Through you, Chairman. This authority, its committees have accepted three-bedroom annexes for older people. So that but what I would say is, and as many members wouldn't know, there's the potential for whatever reasons in the future that a couple may not wish to share a bed, medical grounds, etc. You know, one of them may be on oxygen, so they would have to have that on through the night, and they'd want to sleep in another room. And this is a retirement property. It doesn't mean they wouldn't want to have guests. They're allowed to have somebody come to stay. They're allowed to have a study if they wish. This isn't affordable in relation to any restrictions in relation to their benefits or any restrictions about that. This is, as I said, a market-led property, and for that reason I don't see any reason we could object to the idea that a retirement property may wish to include 3 bedrooms. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Thompson is next.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, thank you, Chairman. I've got to say, I've not, from everything I've seen, like most members, I'm not wild about this application, on this proposal. Anywhere there's an application, though, you can always wait for the next one and the next one and the next one, even if the land's not in the same ownership. We know how these things progress along a road. But I have the same problem as Councillor Boyce, in that I can't support a refusal on the basis of bulk and size and no need, because we can see there's no need. We can see there's a need, because we're sitting here making decisions for the whole district, not for any part of the district and not for our wards. And for me, I'm afraid bulk and size, without a lot more to it, doesn't cover something that I think I could support. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Sorry, the other side of the room now. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I'm just not entirely sure what we're looking at here, because the agent has told us it's a retirement community, it's more housing for the elderly. However, the refusal of another large elderly provision recently evidences that Burnham doesn't, in fact, need any more elderly housing, and that actually we've taken far more in relation to the schma than actually we should have. And in fact, the applicant themselves admits that the independent / assisted living element will probably not be appropriate or required solely in additional units in phase 2 might be considered an over-provision in the area. So members, do we have an elderly retirement community, or do we just have a very large housing estate? Because if we just have a very large housing estate, it is neither a strategic site nor is a garden suburb, and therefore it falls outside all of the Burnham and Maldon District Council policies as far as I can see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I'm going to go back to the leader in a moment just to sum up. Are there any other members that wish to speak?
I'd like to speak.
Yes, I was coming to you, yes. Okay, in that case, leader.
Thank you, Chairman. If you'll just bear with me, because I've taken a few notes when I was reading this afternoon, so I've got a few questions. The heads of term section 106 agreement, I've got 2 different ones. So one says that the medical centre and all the facilities will be built before phase 2. Can I have confirmation that is true? And I ask that, members, because my main area of concern is the medical centre. I have tried to get contact with the NHS today to find out if this medical centre is going to be equipped. And for members who maybe don't realise that when the previous application for phase 1 came out, we were promised all sorts at Burnham Town Council, like an MRI scanner. I've tried to get information that will justify and give members full information, because I think you need to be fully informed on how you're going to vote. It's all right having a medical centre, etc., but unless the NHS is going to provide for it, is it a private practice? So forgive me, I couldn't get the information to bring. I don't know if the officers have more information, because I think this is critical. This is an assisted living, old people's retirement village, and we have to make sure we look after our residents. Don't stick them in the middle of a field outside on the edge of a settlement, that it is outside the development boundary. It is actually 3 kilometres to the town centre. And I'm looking at 5.3.1.33. I just want to correct some of the information in the officer's report, so please forgive me, I'm not being difficult or picky. But 3 kilometres, I think Councillor Swain said, I think he said 2 kilometres. It's actually 3 kilometres according to some of the other information. We don't have banks, we don't have building societies. We do luckily have cafes and coffee shops, etc. We also have a long walk into town where these facilities are going to be used. Now, I myself, I know you're going to be surprised, members, do qualify to go into this retirement village. I know you're all shocked, I don't look as though I'm over 55, but sadly I am. I do think I would personally like some clarity on what the applicants, I think it's in his own report, I think it's their Planning and Design Bureau Limited planning statement, and if you look at page 55, if members have got it, 6.18, and I think this has been mentioned before, so Chairman, if you'll allow me just to have a little bit longer than maybe I should have. The development would generally satisfy, assimilate into the existing countryside, subject to the planning and landscaping proposed. However, from 3 viewpoints to the east and the northwest, Phase 2 development would result in a minor adverse impact on the landscape and cannot be mitigated. Now, I think we've all debated whether it's minor or major in the past, because it depends what your viewpoint is. I personally don't think it's minor, I think it's major. I think it's further development on a field, and to me it's sprawling. Yeah, it's okay, we've got phase 1. That could maybe be accommodated and mitigated by the number of trees and the way it was agreed with the hard work at this committee, at this council, to agree landscaping. This is actually going to go all the way around. You saw it, members, and an L shape that went down the back of people's back gardens that are already on there. I do have a problem with the word minor. I personally don't see it's minor, I think it's major. The harm to the character and the intrinsic beauty of the countryside must weigh against the development and is attributed moderate weight having regard to the character of impact and the limited number of viewpoints concerned. And I think that breaches, and I have brought my LDP this time, so I can actually state what policy it breaches, if that's okay, members. Policy S8. And policy S8 states quite clearly in our LDP, the countryside will be protected for its landscape, natural resources and ecological value, as well as its intrinsic character and beauty. Well, I actually think it's a beautiful field. I think we've got beautiful green areas, and I do think as a council, it's not just Burnham because I'm the ward member, I'm Maldon District Council leader. We have to promote, we have to protect our beautiful green spaces. Now, if there is a need, and I think Mr. Lee said that quite clearly there was a need, but the affordable housing content of here, this development site, is not going to be here. It's going to be a commuted sum that goes somewhere else. I know I'm getting a bit above myself, members, but I've got one more before you stop me, Chairman. 6.19. Based on the assessments undertaken to date, the only other matter that could be said to weigh against the proposal is that the site lies some distance from the town centre. Now, that is on their own, the developer's own health impact assessment. This could be said to attract considerable weight against the proposal, particularly having regard to the scale of the development. However, this statement explains that the site is accessible to Burnham-on-Crouch town centre by bus and cycle. Now, I live on the Maldon Road, and I'm always amazed when it says we have a regular bus service. I see the school bus going down in the morning, and I see the school bus going back. I don't see a regular one, except for at Christmas. I think they do at Christmas one. I know the developer, because I've read the pack, because I can see him looking at me even the wrong glasses. They are looking at having DART, so they're actually got some sums to be able to produce a bus service. What we've got to remember is we've got small estate roads within this site. Yeah, so you're not going to have big buses. So if it goes into phase 2, phase 3, they're going to be small sites, small road sites. Now, I'm really concerned that it says quite clearly in all their literature that, you know, we don't need to worry about education contributions, because people who live here, you know, go into these this retirement village, it is not necessary. But it states quite clearly that other homes, 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom homes, will be given up for people to downsize and go into retirement village. Right. To me, one more minute, please. It's really important. I don't speak very often. Sorry, I maybe do. Sorry, members. But because Mr. Lee will know what I'm going to say here. It will affect our education. Now, if we are freeing up houses in around Burnham-on-Crouch, because this is where this development is going to be, it's going to hopefully serve the whole of the district, but it will free up houses in Burnham, so it's going to create and add to our infrastructure shortage. and I'm sorry, Chairman, I know you're going to shut me up, but I've got so many other things, but I think it fails on...
I do think I must. I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much indeed. Before I go to the vote, Councillor Morris, you wanted to make a final...
Can I have some questions answered, please? I did actually ask some questions.
Yes, Mr Lee.
Yeah, through you, Chairman, there's been quite a few questions asked over the last few members. So I'll be honest, I've bullet pointed things, so I might end up answering something that wasn't a question and may miss the exact question because of the time, and I apologise.
Right.
One thing I would just want to comment on is a point raised by Councillor Thompson in relation to bulk and size. But also to echo the point on design that was also said by a member earlier. This is outline in nature. We don't necessarily have those pieces of information before us, particularly design, and this is potentially bulk. So if members do have concerns with the proposal in relation to the development, just need to be very conscious this is outline in nature only with land, I think it's access and layout. So we don't have the design and the scale of the development in front of us per se, so just be very conscious of wording if you do have issues with the application. One of the issues I've also would like to comment is about the fact that was this always part of a bigger scheme, and will there be a phase 3, 4 and 5, etc. Whatever your beliefs on this are, it can't be a material consideration for determination of this application. Each application is assessed on its own merits. We are where we are with this application. I can't comment on whether or not officers would have supported a scheme of this scale originally, but we have granted phase 1, and we are in a situation where phase 2 has been submitted at a time where we haven't got 5-year land supply. If members grant permission or it's allowed at appeal when a phase 3 comes in, we'd assess the application with what's submitted and the situation we are at the time. So your beliefs in your heart on that matter, just please don't give any weight as a material consideration in termination of the application. I'm assuming Councillor Bell was referring to Petticrow's application, and I just want to highlight that application was for C2 use. That was for a care home, not for older people's living. So in planning terms there's a difference. A care home is C2, an older person's home, just because it's age restricted, is C3. We have an over provision of C2 from what the LDP required, which is different to older people housing. Furthermore, this application doesn't have any extra care, and as it's already been discussed, I can't remember who it was that said it, you know, that's why Essex County Council haven't been consulted and haven't raised, because it's considered that there hasn't been any, but I'm just thinking back, sorry, my brain was going off, that actually they only wanted around 60 in the Burnham area and 60 at Maldon and Haybridge roughly at the time of the last discussion. So for clarity, that was obviously a long time, things may have changed, but I'm assuming that's part of the reasoning why there isn't any as part of this scheme. Just obviously want to highlight the reference in relation to strategic sites and it not being a garden suburb and policy SA, etc. We aren't able to demonstrate a 5-year land supply, and therefore policy SA and a strategic our settlement boundaries, our requirement of trying to deliver our housing within them and through garden suburbs to a certain extent has fallen away. There's a tilted balance now. They are still a material consideration, but they are only that now. They're not. We are now working in the tilted balance. So just because they're outside the settlement boundary never should be a reason for refusal automatically, but it can't just be the reason for how we word out any objection if there is an objection. In relation to heads of terms, that is what has been agreed at the moment and put forward, and that would be what would be part of the legal agreement. So I can't really say much more than that, Councillor Stamp. Also, in relation to some of the comments about what may or may not have been offered at the medical centre, if I recall correctly, some of those conversations were brought up at the debate previously, and my advice to members then was to not give them any weight. We were just talking about the provision of a medical centre. Anything, all singing, all dancing, any bells and whistles was not part of our informal agreement, was not part of the material considerations that officers came to when they recommended granting plan permission at that time, and therefore shouldn't be consideration for this, particularly as that medical centre has got planning permission and isn't part of this application. And the only other...
I think the question, Mr Lee, was the medical centre, was it to be built before phase 2 was passed?
Through you, Chairman, yeah, that is correct. There is need to be a level of services and dwellings provided. I can hopefully Ms Matthews can 100% confirm this, but my understanding are that the facilities predominantly on phase 1 will need to be required to be able to mitigate the harm. But I'm getting a slow nod from Ms Matthews, a faster nod, yeah, Ms Matthews confirmed that is correct. So all those facilities will be required before phase 2 can be occupied. And the only other, I think, other point raised was about the minor adverse impacts on the landscape. You know, members, you've all heard me say it 100 times that, you know, every development has some level of impact, and we just need to consider whether or not the harm is so severe it warrants a reason for refusal. The slight difference is now without a 5-year land supply and when an application is for housing, whether it's 1, whether it's 1,000, is that we have to balance whether or not the harm significantly outweighs the benefits. And I think my colleague would also like to just make a point if I've covered everything.
Yeah, Mr. Gallo.
I just wanted to try and give some context in relation to the housing need in the locality, just to give you a picture. And this was a report that was run in relation to 1 and 2 bedroom bungalows, sheltered and linked, both sheltered and linked to sheltered, that were advertised between the 1st of January 2019 to present. So in Burnham there were 3 one-bedroom properties that were advertised on our waiting list. And to give you a context about the need, there were, in the first property there were 18 applicants, the second one there was 22, and the third one there was 17. And there was 1 2-bed bungalow that was advertised, and this was not restricted to Maldon residents. And this advertisement has 48 bids, so there is a need there. So while, you know, in terms of provision we could end up with, we will almost certainly fill it, and obviously in relation to community sums, that goes to fulfil a massive affordable housing across the district, and also open up to a much wider cohort than just elderly people.
Okay, now
Can we have a different panel for a point of order, Chairman?
if you have a point of order, please go ahead with it, Councillor Boyce.
Well, it's the rule that allows a personal statement, and I'd like to make clear when I referred to phases 3, 4 and 5 that Mr Lee picked up on. I also made it clear that we could not take that into consideration.
You did, yes.
To look at what we had in mind.
Yeah. Yes, I recall that, and that is noted.
Mr Chairman, can I just say, I did note that, Councillor Boyce, and I did respect that, but I'm just advising in case any other members were to give it different weight to you had stated, just for clarity.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, can I come on?
So I just want to, well, I'll allow the leader to come back. What I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to take a vote on the first officer's recommendation. If that fails, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Morris.
You can't, I suggest do that because Councillor Morris had his resolution on the table before the officer's recommendation was put and seconded.
All right, I note that. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for allowing me to come back. Can I just ask Mr Lee, I know we keep coming back to the magic 5-year land supply, but can you put it in perspective that I know you can't give me the exact number of how many councils have fallen below that. I know before COVID we were 4.9, and this council should applaud itself for actually having a good build-out rate. The number has dropped significantly because of the economic circumstances of COVID. Now, I know that there's no political will from central government to help councils like us, but I still feel that we need, I understand what you're saying, but if a development is not suitable and members deem that it's not suitable in a location, we still need to be listened to. So I don't know if you can clarify that, but you know that we have built out, we only have to look at Burnham's build-out rate to know how good this council have been, and I'd like you to be able to substantiate and back me up on that, please, Mr Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. Don't have any definitive figures. I've spoken to a number of Essex colleagues, and they've agreed that their 5-year land supplies have reduced. One neighbouring authority such as this has been very successful. Whether this is solely down to COVID, I wouldn't be able to comment. You know, where councils are through their local plan periods can affect that, lots of things. I totally hear what Councillor Stamper said, and if I'm honest, personally may echo some of that. But on the flip side, what I would say is, however I feel about that, the government is requiring us to do, or the law requires us to determine a plan application according to the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And until there is any guidance changing that, the government are not giving any leniency for COVID, and therefore we have to determine the application around the planning matters, not around how we feel the planning matter should be. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. So the recommendation, the first recommendation was by Councillor Morris to refuse this. Now, do you want to refine your grounds, Councillor Morris? Because this is outlined and we can't really go on bulk and scale.
I would ask that what Councillor Stamp is taken into consideration. I like some of the stuff that Wendy's just said. I still do think that bulk and scale is a problem, but there's probably better planning reasons that Councillor Stamp has come up with. And just on a side note, I'd just like to bring to everyone's attention, because the dangling carrot that is the 106 agreements has been mentioned quite extensively. And if everyone would like to have a look at the Maldon District Council infrastructure funding statement on 106s, between 1991 and 2020, the total due was £28,261.78. What was received was £5,958,043 quid, and the outstanding is somewhere around 21,600,000. So the 106 agreements are the carrot that are dangled but very rarely nibbled.
Well, that may be something for another committee, unless you want to address that, Mr. Lee.
Through you, Chairman, I think I need to comment on that in case that fell into any material considerations for any members during the termination of the application.
It's not a planning consideration.
It would be a planning consideration. Set forth, you know, developments are phased, payments are phased. They're off the cuff. I can't think of any application that has not met its requirements so far through our LDP allocation. But for example, classic one would be the South Maldon Relief Road. At the moment, we've only had around £150,000 because that's where we are through the build out of the phasing development. So that's the issue that, you know, that we can't say that Section 106 monies won't come forward when it's a legal requirement, but it is a phased delivery. Okay. It's not given at the beginning as soon as you get planning permission. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Stamp, are you able to help Councillor Morris with a reason?
Yeah, I don't know if members can. I'm not brilliant at policy numbers. I thought it was policy S8, and I think it's the countryside will be protected for landscape, natural resources, ecology value, and the intrinsic character and beauty. I actually feel this development would breach the intrinsic beauty of the site. I think it is. There's another one. Is it D1, members? You're going to have to help me.
Yes.
D1, I think it breaches. I'm just trying to find it, because I know Mr. Lee is not allowed to support us very much.
A lot more support when it comes to reasons, refusal and reasons for approval. And I don't necessarily require members to quote the exact policies, but all I would want to highlight is that policy S8 is out of date because we have no 5-year land supply. So trying to hang the whole argument on that policy.
But Mr. Lee, then all our policies are out of date.
Through you, Chairman, all our policies in relation to housing location are out of date. That is correct. That is what the NPPF states. We then need to just consider the planning principles of good development rather than sticking to strictly to our policy. So, for example, you've seen officers won't say now that a dwelling in a certain area is unsustainable, or say it's not close to facilities. The background evidence that has formed our policies in the LDP still exists. The need for good design, the need for sustainable transport, the need for ecology, historic environment, etc. That all still exists, but certain policies are out of date, and it'd be very dangerous to use them as the driver for our refusal. Remembering now, we have to demonstrate, if we are to refuse it, that the harm significantly outweighs the benefit. So that's the tilted balance, and that's the difference. We can't be looking strictly on policies. We need to be demonstrating that the harm significantly outweighs the benefits. And I'm not here to say, obviously, as officers, we don't think that is, and I'm not saying that you can't come to a different conclusion, members, but you need to put forward your position with that in mind rather than strictly on our policies, because I think that'd be a very dangerous position at appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I just go to Councillor Channer? She's indicated that she wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think Mr Lee said it actually, that officers consider that the harm of this development, the positives outweigh it. I'm afraid I have a contrary view. I do believe that the harm of this development is not outweighed by the positives, and it does largely hinge on the landscape to a degree. And I can refer to the officer's report 5.4.11, 5.4.12 and 5.413. And it does mention about moderate to substantial visual effects from various areas, and it says quite clearly in the report that not all of these could be mitigated, and it's going to have significant effect on the views from the back gardens of properties fronting Maldon Road and Green Lane, which would be substantial. Now, that to me is a significant loss of residential amenity, residential visual amenity, and therefore I have to disagree. This is an important landscape. I think our landscape assessment actually has mentioned this type of landscape it would have, and therefore for me, my weight, I'm allowed to do this. I've had my planning training. I can place a different weight to officers, and I'm afraid my weight is that this development, the harm it has, does not outweigh the positives. The harm is greater. I would also add, the leader has mentioned it, about links to Burnham-on-Crouch. The very fact there has to be a minibus and other things, we can't escape the fact there's going to be a lot of car usage, both from the residents on the site and visitors to it. Effectively, we are adding, because I didn't vote for the first phase, and I know I've got to look at things separately. In fact, what we are doing here in my book, as I've always felt, is an isolated enclave with limited opportunities for integration with the wider community. Thank you, Chairman. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that Councillor Lagan again?
Yeah, I just think Councillor Chan said to 16th, but it's all 3 kilometres away from the town centre is something that bothers me.
Right, so
Councillor Bell.
Councillor Bell, yes. Sorry, I can't...
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to add, and we know this is a tilted balance, but I think we should take heart from other decisions. I gather that a similar scheme in Rochford has recently been refused on grounds of significant harm to the countryside and the landscape. And also, we need to bear in mind the Gladman, Uttlesford, I believe, versus Gladman, where the tilted balance was not considered to be in favour of sustainable land supply, 5-year land supply against local development policy. Local development policy was still considered to have more weight. So there is some precedent in this area, members.
Okay.
Thanks.
I feel I need to ask Mr Lee to respond to that.
Yeah, can I obviously totally back up and agree with what Councillor Channer said. I don't just, I've always said, members, you can come to your own decisions, and you can give balance. It's just I'm trying to provide clarity on how we exactly word things and how taking into account the legal position. So if members consider that the impact of this development on those residents that our report acknowledges would be significant is warrants reason for refusal, that's within members' gift. I don't have an issue with that one at all.
Right.
That's not saying I agree with any of them, but in a planning, it's got plan. There is.
Okay,
plan.
so I really just. Sorry.
But yeah, it'll say moving on to in relation to car usage, distance, etc. What I would advise is obviously as a council we accepted this principle at the last application, and I would just advise members it may be very dangerous to go against that now without a reasoned argument when previously we have accepted it as acceptable. Remembering we are the council, members change, officers change, but the council made the decision. And the point on the other schemes, firstly, I'd like to highlight 2 things about Rochford. Firstly, it does have a 5-year land supply, and more important, it's in the green belt, which actually is one of the exemptions for where the tilted balance doesn't kick in. So for that, even if it didn't have a 5-year land supply, it'd still be in the green belt. So please give that 0 weight. In relation to the Gladman development, I emailed all members on the 4th of May, May the 4th, in relation to that. I think it was Councillor Bell that raised it. The tilted balance is still in play. That decision doesn't say that the tilted balance doesn't exist. It stands on the shoulders of other case law that relating to that matter, and most one is the East Staffordshire, which acknowledges that the starting point will always be the development plan as material considerations indicate otherwise. Gladwin roughly was having a two-part argument, that one that was that basically your policies all are gone and they don't matter at all, which is not what officers are saying in this report, not what Catherine Matthews has said in a debate, and not what I've said. It's about balancing them. While they are out of date, they're still a material consideration, they're just less weight, and it's the balancing process. And Gladwin were trying to argue that that was incorrect. And then the second part was, even if you do have to think about it, it's a two-part test. And as you can see from the officer's report, where Ms Matthews has very excellently dealt with the tilted balance, you can see how we have merged our policies with the tilted balance to keep it as one test, which is what the judge decided. So that decision never says that the tilted balance isn't in play or doesn't exist. It just says that it has to be done appropriately, which I envisage our officers do, and I'm just trying to make sure in my advice that members do. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. I want to go to. I want to sort out actually whose proposal this is going to be first.
Morris, wasn't it?
So, Councillor Morris, you've made that proposal.
Chairman, point of order.
Yes.
Are we not required to vote on the officer's recommendation first?
It hasn't.
No.
It wasn't moved and it wasn't seconded. So we are going straight to Councillor Morris's. If it's going to be your proposal, Councillor Morris, which was seconded by Councillor Bassinger, I believe. Yeah. Yes. Are members happy to take a vote on that?
Yes.
Right. On the reasons, okay. So I know that Councillor Channer spoke of the reasons. It was location and poor transport links, was it?
Well, my view is, I think you've heard the landscape, and my view is, officers claim that the harm does not outweigh the benefits, but my view is the benefits do not outweigh the harm. To me, the harm is more significant, and therefore the positives of the development, the benefits from it, are not greater than the harm that this development would result in, Chairman. That's my view. And I did mention about transport, I think the leader did as well, and about the distance from Burnham-on-Town, Burnham Town itself, the leaders highlighted that. So there are areas, and I think, not the planning reason, the integration with the existing community, I think this will not be something that does occur, although then the argument will be from officers phase one. And also, if we're talking about economic benefits, I couldn't see anything within the report that actually substantiated what the economic benefits are. It's all good and well to say it will mean jobs and everything, but I could see no evidence to weigh up exactly what that economic benefit was, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you okay with that, Ms Bird?
Thank you, Chairman. All I would say is, firstly, that point about benefits hasn't been raised previously, so shouldn't be moved because it hasn't been part of the debate. But I would also just say, for clarity, that is within the officer's report. It's relatively standard economic benefits that you'll see in every appeal decision. So when a construction development happens, there will be a certain level of economic development. So I would be very conscious to try and say that there aren't any economic benefits. I'm not saying they're extensive, but there will be some employment opportunities, there will be some development. They are covered in the officer's report and they are fairly standard. So it's all part of the tilted balance, given the weight you want, but I would just be conscious that it's fairly standard.
Okay, I see a number of hands going now. So those people who haven't spoken, Councillor Durham, I don't think you've spoken on this.
Chairman, are we making a bit of a meal of this? I think that Councillor Channer hit the nail on the head. I would have said, and Mr Lee has agreed, that the reasons for refusal can quite simply be that the benefits do not outweigh the harm of this development.
Yes,
that's the fundamental issue. We can go into a myriad of other issues, but fundamentally, the harm to the countryside is not outweighed by the benefits of this development, and that's what I would put to the vote, Chairman, with respect.
All right. So, Miss Bird, do you have sufficient there? You do. Right. Members, then, in that case, we'll go to the vote on this. So this is to refuse the application. I'm not going to hear any more now. I'm going to go straight to the vote. Thank you. I think this has been well debated. A recorded vote. Yes, you can do that. So, members, those in favour of refusing this application on the grounds that Councillor Channer has spoken about, Ms Bird will now take the vote.
Can we have that more precisely, Chairman? What are the grounds?
Okay, Ms Bird, are you able to call those back?
The benefit.
Chairman, the grounds mentioned by Councillor Durham as well, that the reason for refusal does not outweigh the harm of this development.
The benefit. The benefit.
Would you like me for clarity? I'll provide some maybe context,
Yes.
but
Yes, please.
obviously this won't be the verbatim because obviously we'll sit aside and draft that. So as always, with all reasons for refusal, but from hearing what Councillor Dunn and what Councillor Channer previously said would be that the benefits of the development do not outweigh the harm, particularly in relation to the, and I can't remember the paragraph, the points related in relation to impact on the character of the area and those neighbours that were specifically mentioned. That would be summing up the 2 points.
Right, I'm going to go to Councillor Nunn because he hasn't spoken yet. Councillor Nunn.
Just so that this is dealt with properly, this is Councillor Morris's proposal.
Yes.
Is Councillor Morris prepared to amend his proposal or to clarify his proposal by accepting that, though that reason for objection?
Yeah.
Of course.
And Councillor Bassinger, you're happy to second that? Right, so procedurally I think we are right. In that case we'll now go to the vote, please.
Members, if you could indicate for, against, or abstain when I call your name, please. This is for refusal, starting with Councillor Bassinger, please.
For.
Councillor Lisfield. For. Councillor Brian Beale.
For.
Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Boyce.
For.
Councillor Mrs Channer.
For.
Councillor Durham.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Mrs Fleming. For. Councillor Hurd.
I will abstain.
Councillor Hubner.
For.
Councillor Keys.
For.
Councillor Lagan. Councillor Mays. For. Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
Councillor Shaughnessy. For. Councillor Siddle.
For.
Councillor Stamp.
For.
Councillor Stevens. For. Councillor Mrs Stilts. For. Councillor Swain.
For.
Councillor Mrs Thompson.
For.
Chairman, that's 23 for, no against and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, and therefore that application is refused. Thank you. So I think this is where we say goodbye to Councillor Bell. Thank you very much indeed.
Bell.
And
Give us a minute, will you?
thank you, members. So we'll move on now to agenda item 7. This is 20-01166 FUL. This is land South Charwood and east of Orchard House, Stoney Hills, Burnham-on-Crouch. This is found on pages 77 to 120. Please note there is a members' update that is found on pages 11 and 12, which relate to objection comments. I think this is being presented by Ms Staplehurst. So I'll give her a moment to get settled up on the screen and okay, Ms Staplehurst, right, okay, if you could please present the report, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Planning permission is sought for the construction of an access road and 1 dwelling. Please note the members' update with an additional public comment. Just for some context, this shows where the application site is located in relation to the wider area. It's located within Stoney Hills, which is an area of residential development to the northeast of the main settlement of Burnham. These photographs give context of the site and the Stoney Hills area. You can see that it was a relatively rural area in 2006. However, due to various applications being approved and allowed on appeal, the area has a more suburban character currently. You can see the extent of development that has taken place in the past 15 years. This is the location plan where you can see the site outlined in red. 3 dwellings have been approved surrounding the site in the blue area, and 6 dwellings approved to the south. The neighbour to the west, Orchard House, is indicated on the plan, and there is a new dwelling being built to the south of Orchard House. These site plans show the other dwellings approved within the wider area and a closer view of the relationship between the site and the neighbouring dwellings. The proposed floor plans and the proposed elevation plans. This application is a resubmission of a previously refused outline application. That application was refused due to concerns from overlooking from the Juliet balcony at Orchard House, which is shown in green, and the overlooking that there would be from the Juliet balcony onto the application site. Under this application, the dwelling has been repositioned so that there is no usable amenity space between the dwelling and Orchard House, and therefore there are no longer concerns in relation to a loss of privacy to the application site. The new dwelling constructed to the southwest of the site is considered to be located at a sufficient distance so it would not overlook the amenity area of the site. It's noted that concerns have been raised by objections with regard to the impact of the proposal on Orchard House, the neighbour to the west, regarding overshadowing and the impact on their view. It's noted that this neighbour has a seating area between the dwelling and the site. The proposed dwelling would be visible from this neighbouring site. However, the loss of a view is not a material planning consideration. Whilst there could be a minor impact on the sunlight to some areas of the neighbouring garden, when the sun is particularly low in the sky, due to the separation distance of 9.2 metres between the two dwellings and the fact that the proposed dwelling would be single-storey, it's not considered that there would be such a material or detrimental impact in planning terms that would justify the refusal of the application. It's noted that permitted development rights will be removed in relation to outbuildings, extensions and dormers, so no further development would occur at the site that could impact on the neighbour in terms of privacy or light. These photos show Orchard House and the newly constructed dwelling from the street scene, the view of the proposed access and the view south towards the rear of Orchard House. These photos are taken from within the application site, and you can see the rear elevation of Orchard House with the Juliet balcony and the other neighbour that's under construction. Overall, when taking into account the planning history for the area and all material considerations, it's considered that the development can be found acceptable and would not have a materially harmful impact on neighbouring sites. It's therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms Staverhurst. Members, I'm going to open the debate and invite you to put any questions or make any comments that you have on the report. I can't see. Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First is a question about this the access road at Stoney. Why does that come up at this stage when it seems to apply to service all the other permitted new developments along there? And is this turning head adequate for refuse lorries? And will the road, or can we put any condition on the road such that it can take such vehicles?
Ms Staverhurst, is it a private road, Ms Staverhurst?
Through you, Chairman, yes. That access road has been approved as part of the applications for the 6 dwellings to the south and the 3 dwellings around the site. It's just been included in this application because it's the access to get to the site, but it has already been approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce, I see you clearly.
The lights have changed and I can almost see you.
officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Seconded.
Well, the recommendation, members, is to grant planning permission subject to the 21 conditions that's proposed. That is proposed by Councillor Boyce and seconded by Councillor Durham. Councillor Morris has asked for a recorded vote. Is that seconded? Seconded. Councillor Lagan seconds that recorded vote. Anybody else?
If this proposal fails, I would like to propose that we refuse due to being incongruous with compliant.
Okay. So, any other members wish to speak on this? Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. I've read the officer's report of the advice to work and looked at it
You may, sorry, I'm sorry to stop you. You may have to wait for the microphone, Councillor Lagan. Sorry, I don't think people can hear you. Was there another hand at the back there? Was that Councillor Durham? Councillor Stamp. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's I just said I've read the report when my device was working, and Ms Staplehurst's presentation, which I'm appreciative of, but I have a few problems with this. It strikes me there's a few comments that were made in there, and they are somewhat subjective, where the view of the Juliet balcony, where it was previously refused, has been moved. It's still going to have a degree of overlooking, which does concern me. It also concerns me about loss of light, not loss of view. We know, Mr. Lee's taught us that with great detail, that the loss of light, although it is minor loss of light to people who have positioned themselves in a locality to have a high quality of life and a sustainable development going forward with quite a large height. It's a big old two-bedroom bungalow. A single-storey bungalow. So I think on the grounds of the bulk and the height and the scale, I think it would cause demonstrable harm for the residents, and I'm not in favour of this application based on those reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp next, and then Councillor Channer.
It's Councillor Channer, it's not me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had yours. Councillor Channer. I'm sorry.
I'm happy to let the leader go next.
No, I'll go last, Councillor Channer. Thank you.
Right, okay, looks like it's me then. Thank you. The officer in the presentation said there was, I think I'm correct, and I'd just like it confirmed, only 9.2 metres between the two dwellings, the existing orchard house and the new proposal. The bungalow is going to be about actually 19, whatever, can you confirm the height? Because there's various things in the report. I think you said 5-point-something metres, about 19 foot?
5.6.
Right, okay, so that's an equivalent, quite substantial height. And I think I made a point about that somewhere else. I do have concerns about that, indeed, because to me, 9.2 metres between two dwellings, and actually I've seen the photos there, I'm aware of other things, and in fact the sunlight is going to be affected, certainly by that, and I do believe there is a demonstrable harm here. I'm afraid I disagree with the weight applied. Again, as I said in my earlier application that's just been up, I have a differing view on this one as well, the weight I apply. You did indicate there's no, about a view, that no one has the right to view, and I think Councillor Lagan's referred to that. However, loss of outlook is a planning material consideration, and I do consider loss of outlook applies quite significantly to should this bungalow be built in the position that it is. It will have an effect on Orchard House, which I consider, myself personally, my weight I'm applying, will be a demonstrable harm to Orchard House, for the residents there as well. So I think loss of outlook comes into the equation, and I do believe demonstrable harm does apply regarding this development proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to bring members' attention to 5.4.5, the very last sentence. Overall, whilst there may be some impact on Orchard House, it is not considered to be such a degree as to the material or to justify the refusal of the application. Obviously, that possibly wouldn't be the agreement of the occupiers of Orchard House. I'll go along with what Councillor Channer has said, and if Councillor Boyce's proposal fails, I would invite Councillor Channer to second my proposal to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. In amongst all of the writing that I've read on this today, but I can't find it at the moment, I read a comment from a resident saying that the planning application notice hadn't been displayed. Can I just hear from the staff, please, that that's not correct?
Ms Staplehurst.
Through you, Chairman, the site notice has been displayed. It may have been at the time that they submitted the comment. It might not have been, or they didn't view it, but it has definitely been displayed. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, members. Oh yes, you want to come back on that?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it had been displayed correctly. And I'm also reading in the report that the plot has been cleared, so further development would deliver no more harm. Doesn't that rather open the floodgates to developers everywhere, clearing plots, and then we have to just go along with it because the wood or the scrubland or whatever has now gone? I'd like to understand that better, please.
Okay, Mr Lee.
Thank you. Mr Staplehurst can bring up the location plan. It's probably the easiest way for me to explain this. As you can see on the plan, planning permission has been granted for 3 bungalows on a larger parcel of land, but this piece of land falls within that development. And as you can see on the, actually I'm assuming you can see because actually I can't see the screen, but I'm going to make an assumption that you can see the 6 bungalows and to the south and then the 3 that surround it. So what that is basically there is a plot that has been remained within the development space that can accommodate a dwelling in officers' opinions. It's not saying just because someone clears scrub we will automatically grant planning permission. There's a difference. It's very much a site-specific statement in relation to the planning history of the development. I hope that's answered your question. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp next, then Councillor, or do you want to go last? Councillor Swain.
Yes, I just wanted to ask the officer, is the height of this building going to be significantly different from the height of all the other bungalows that have been already permitted?
Through you, Chairman, I don't have the dimensions of the other bungalows, but it is a very similar proportion design. It is sort of based on the other bungalows. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
Chairman, on 5.4.5, I think it's on line 8, it says the proposed dwelling would be located 9.2 metres from the closest wall of Orchard House. Now, am I correct in remembering, I'm sure the planning officers will put me right if I'm not, that there should be 25 metres from building to building, and this isn't mentioned here. Do forgive me if I'm wrong, but thank you.
Through you, Chairman, I think that's a reference to the Essex Iron Guide, and if I'm correct, and I'm shooting from the hip, so please, that's relation to first floor windows rather than, I'm getting a nod from the officer, yeah. So it's relation to first floor windows to stop overlooking. It's very different on single story properties because obviously a normal standard fence provides a certain level of protection and mitigating harm that you obviously don't get at first floor. So the Essex Iron Guide talked about first floor, not about ground floor, and obviously this is a bungalow, so it wouldn't be relevant in this instance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Stamp.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I actually agree with Councillor Channer. I do have an issue with this bungalow being so close. Yes, it maybe is the right distance away. I think the officer said, and I did take a couple of notes, overlooking, it was refused before because of overlooking the Juliet balcony. I don't believe that's changed, has it? It's still going to be overlooked. because of, even though it's a bungalow and it's lower and there's no windows across the back, the whole of that back bungalow view wall is against a 6-foot fence, I would imagine. I wouldn't think it'd be any greater than that, any higher than that, which I actually have an issue with. No windows in the back of a whole side of a house. Yes, and it could be designed. Mr. Lee will most probably say it's not relevant, Councillor Stamp. It is relevant. The design and people getting sunlight, as far as I'm concerned, is very, very important. I actually feel, I can't remember if Councillor Chenner used the word contrived, but I've heard it before. I think it is contrived. I think this development, this bungalow is contrived, and I certainly don't support it.
Right, thank you. In that case then, I'm going to go to the vote. I think a recorded vote was requested and seconded. So this...
Yes, please, thank
Sorry,
you.
I don't know, I think Councillor Stamp's looking at me as though she wanted me to reply. That's why I...
So sorry,
sorry, Chairman, if you don't want me to, I'm happy not to,
chair.
but I can feel the eyes burning into me. In relation to the previous plan application, that was outline in nature, and the applicant indicated that the bungalow would be at the front of the site and that the private amenity space would be at the rear, and the Juliet balcony to the west would have overlooked this. As part of this application, it's a full plan permission. They've actually sited the bungalow further to the west, so that while there is a space to the rear of the property, which, that due to the limited nature of it and the fact that the doors would open onto the amenity space to the side, it's considered to not really be a particularly usable space. So therefore, this is mitigated overlooking because it's not considered to be private amenity space of a usable area, similar to like you'd have on the side of a traditional dwelling where you know you'd be able to see down the side of it, and we don't class that to be usable private amenity space. So that rear has fallen into that. So in relation to usable private amenity space that's not overlooked, that we consider as officers that it's now policy compliant. And in relation to the design point and impacts on quality of future occupiers, I just want to obviously say terraced houses or semi-detached houses. This property has 3 active elevations with windows, doors, etc., and contains 1 elevation that doesn't. It's not unusual for properties to have 1 elevation, whether it's a design, a detached one on a side elevation, for example, or obviously if you're semi-detached or terraced in relation to the fact that you've got other properties there that you won't have windows. So I think arguing that having 1 elevation with no form of opening has an impact on the quality of life of the future occupiers is a very limited argument. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, can I come back?
You can come back on that, yes.
Thank you. I'm just going to come back on that, Mr. Lee, because you always say you take every applicant's application on its own merit. We're not looking at terraced houses here. We're actually looking at a bungalow in a development that is predominantly bungalows or big, large properties and houses. I don't think there's a terraced property on Stoney Hills. I stand corrected if there is, and I will apologise. I don't even think there's a semi-detached on Stoney Hills. So I do feel it's a little bit out of context, but I take and thank you for your contribution and the points made. I don't agree with them, but I do take on board what you've said.
I apologise if I wasn't clear. What I was talking about was the position that having any elevation without a window automatically has any evidence of demonstrable impact on the future occupiers. In planning terms, I would advise that that is not a sound basis of a position. And I'm just using the fact that terraced housing, in principle, has 2 elevations where there are no windows on that, and that is an accepted point of planning, that terraced housing is acceptable. So just as an impact on the quality of life of future occupiers, I think that's got limited merit. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, okay. I'm going to go to the vote now. This is a proposal to grant planning permission. This was proposed by Councillor Boyce and seconded by Councillor Durham.
Has he gone?
Calling vote, please.
Councillor Boyce gone?
He has. It looks as though he has gone.
Well,
Yes, Councillor Mays.
Yeah, I think did Councillor Boyce go to the West Road?
Well, I don't know where he's gone, but
Chairman, he's left.
he's left. Right. Are we still able to proceed, Mr. Crouch?
You can, it's still a valid motion.
Thank you very much. So that is the proposal. The proposal is to grant, and Miss Bird will now take the recorded vote.
I didn't think you could.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this is to grant as per the officer's recommendation. If you could indicate for or against or abstain, please, starting with Councillor Bassinger.
I'm so slightly confused. Can you explain?
Well, perhaps I can help. We're voting on whether to grant planning permission for this or not. So we're either for it or against it.
Chairman, can I ask, and I don't know the point of order, Mr Quelch might be able to help me, who proposed this?
It was Councillor Boyce.
Well, surely he has to be in the room if he's proposed it to take a vote.
I don't think that's right. Once that proposal's been made, he obviously now has left the room, so if he came back in, he couldn't vote on it because he hasn't heard all the information. But he made the proposal, that was seconded, that stands.
Right.
So a proposal, Chairman, just to make it clear, a proposal doesn't simply stand because a member or is lost because a member has gone. A proposal once seconded is a proposal irrespective of who's made it.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll carry on with the vote. So this is a vote to either... Yes, Councillor Mays.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Chairman, could we please note that Councillor Boyce left the meeting?
Yes, the minutes will show that. So this is to grant for or against. Carry on, Ms Bird.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Councillor Bassinger, please.
Against the officer's report.
Thank you. Councillor Miss Beale. Against. Councillor Brian Beale.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Channer. Against. Councillor Durham.
Councillor Boyce thought.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Fleming. Against. Councillor Hurd.
I will abstain.
Councillor Hubner.
Against.
Councillor Cole.
She's not here.
Councillor Keys.
For.
Councillor Lagan.
Against,
Councillor Mays.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
Against.
Councillor Nunn.
Against.
Councillor Shaughnessy. Against. Councillor Siddle.
For.
Councillor Stamp.
Against.
Councillor Stevens. For. Councillor Stilts. Against. Councillor Swain.
For.
Councillor Mrs Thompson. For. Thank you, Chairman. The results of that are 6 for, 15 against and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, planning permission is not granted. Agenda item 8 are any other items of business.
Reasons.
Forgive me, Chairman, but now you need to go, I think, to Councillor Morris. Councillor Morris said he was going to put in a proposal, and if you're refusing, you've got to have reasons for refusing. So it's important to take a vote on a proposal that's seconded for refusal with the reasons behind it, because those reasons are obviously going to be very important.
Indeed.
Yes, officer recommendation.
Councillor Morris.
I would propose that we refuse on the grounds of this being incongruous and contrived. I would invite Councillor Channer to second that.
Chairman, can I come in? I think Councillor Channer's reasons were absolutely spot on. She was concerned about the lack of light. I think you're there, Councillor Channer?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Councillor. Do we have the microphone, please, Bernard? Thank you.
This keeps happening to me, I think. People keep quoting my name, wanting me to say things. I think I quoted about loss of outlook.
What was it?
And also I believed I applied my weight differently to the officers, where I believed there was demonstrable harm should this application be allowed. Again, I referred to, I think, like the previous application, I placed a different weighting than the officers did.
Yeah.
So that's my view. The 2 reasons that Councillor Morris gave, with all due respect, I would like to see some additions to that, which is along the lines, I guess, of what I said and which you're referring to, Leader.
Okay, so we have incongruous and contrived, a loss of outlook, demonstrable harm, should it be allowed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Councillor Morris must agree that amendment.
Do you agree that amendment?
I do agree with that amendment.
And was it Councillor Lagan seconded it?
Yes.
And do you agree with those amendments, Councillor Leggett? You do, right.
Through you, Chairman, for clarity, can I confirm that Councillor Channon, when talking about demonstrable harm, she was talking about due to loss of outlook, because the way you've just put it forward was as though that was its own third reason for refusal, and demonstrable harm standing alone doesn't mean anything. So
Yeah, so demonstrable harm due to the
loss of outlook. Loss of outlook.
The outlook. Yes, that's correct.
Not just that, the whole film.
Right. Are you okay with that, Miss Bird? Sorry, members, I just need to communicate with Miss Bird. Sorry. Okay, so we have the refusal on the grounds that it is incongruous and contrived. There is a loss of outlook, which is the demonstrable harm is the loss of outlook. Should it be allowed?
No, and the development per se, because the officers weighed up that the whole development was the demonstrable harm was such that the development could go ahead. I'm applying a different weight. So yes, the loss of outlook is demonstrable in my view, but also the development itself, the demonstrable
But the development,
harm,
so the
have
development
a different
itself.
weight to the officer's report.
Take the weight off the loss of outlook. It is demonstrable.
I think from a legal point of view, just to give Mr. Leo a rest from this, demonstrable harm from the development itself is not a reason.
No.
You've got to say in what way the development in itself has some demonstrable harm. Simply saying the development itself, you've got to specify in what way.
Well, I think there's lots about Chairman, and we're talking about the loss of residential immunity, aren't we? So residents existing in a future orchard house.
Character.
Through you, Chairman,
Well,
just for clarity, I think if members have raised, from my understanding, would be that incongruous and contrived form of development, which is obviously a design issue, and that the development would have a detrimental impact on the neighbours due to a loss of outlook, which I think are standard reasons for refusal. It's just the randomness of the demonstrable harm being floated around that's causing me concern and Mr. Quelch, for want of a better phrase. But if they're the two issues that seems to be in the debate around, they are, well, they're acceptable planning reasons for refusal.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman.
Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Morris?
I am satisfied with that.
Thank
I
you.
do not want to cause Mr. Lee any discomfort whatsoever.
And Councillor Lagan?
I'm greatly satisfied, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Those will be the grounds for refusal then in that case. So Miss Bird, if we could take the vote, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, so voting for refusal, please. If you could indicate for, against, or abstain when I call your name. Starting with Councillor Bassington, please.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Miss Beale. For. Councillor Brian Beale.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Channer. For. Councillor Durham.
He's gone.
No, this is left to do with it.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming. For. Councillor Hurd.
Abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Hübner.
For.
Councillor Keys.
For.
Councillor Madden.
For, please, Durham.
Councillor Mays.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
Councillor Shaughnessy. For. Councillor Siddle.
Against.
Councillor Stack.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
Against.
Councillor Stilts.
For.
Councillor Swain.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
Against.
So, Chairman, the results of that are 15 for, 4 against, and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Miss Bird. In that case, that is refused. Agenda item 8 are any other items of business that the chairman of the committee decides are urgent. There are none. In that case, I'll move to the closure of the meeting. Members and officers, I thank you for your contributions this evening. I draw the meeting to a close at 9:39. Members are advised not to enter into any further discussions in this forum. Please leave the meeting promptly and please bear in mind social distancing. Thank you. Nobody's listening.